Hey there, welcome to episode 124 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is some brand new figures that just arrived in the mail yesterday. I got a big box from Big Bad Toy Store in. It had a bunch of different stuff from a bunch of different lines. And I considered doing another mishmash video where I just show you a little bit of everything I have, because I've got some Transformers and some Funko Pops and some Marvel Legends. But I figured I'm going to kind of do probably what's going to be a short video, and I'm just going to focus on 3 figures that I got from Neca, and this is the entire wave 1 of their Defenders of the Earth line. So this is a brand new line. It has been out for a couple of months. I think it was originally released as a Walmart exclusive, but I never saw it at Walmart. But after a couple of months of being available at Walmart's, it went available wide, and I was able to order it through Big Bad Toy Store. So that just arrived for me yesterday. And this, I don't know if I'll get any more figures from the line, because if you're not familiar with the Defenders of the Earth, I'll just give you a quick background. So it was a cartoon that ran in 1986, 1987. And I remember it a little bit. I was 8 years old when that would have been on, and I don't remember it a ton. I remember it enough that those characters made an impression on me, and I know who the characters in the Defenders of the Earth are. But if you ask me anything really specific about any of the episodes, because I probably only watched it when it first initially aired. I don't know if it was ever put on syndication or anything like that, but if it did, I never caught it in syndication, as opposed to, say, G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, which I probably watched most of those episodes multiple times as a kid, and then I've since bought DVDs of some of those cartoons. So I loved them as a kid, and they stayed with me. But when it comes to Defenders of the Earth, it's just kind of like a fuzzy, distant memory. But anyway, so what it was is there was a company called King Features, and they were like a publishing company, and they were in charge of the publishing rights for a bunch of kind of old pulp heroes, primarily their newspaper comic strips. So they took a bunch of these kind of unrelated King's Features characters, and they put them in a cartoon together. So it was the Phantom, and it was Flash Gordon, and Mandrake the Magician. There was also a 4th main member of the Defenders, which was Luthor, or am I saying this right? I think Luthor. And he was Mandrake's assistant. But anyway, neither Mandrake nor Luthor were included in this first wave of figures. So besides those 4, though, the Defenders of the Earth was kind of a multi-generational superhero team. And so the sons and daughters of those heroes were also involved in the group. So you had this group of about 8 characters or so, fighting evil villains as you would expect in any cartoon. But the main villain that they fought was Ming the Merciless. And Ming he was like Flash Gordon's villain. He's not he's a science fiction space character, not the kind of guy you would typically expect somebody like the Phantom to fight. But that was their main villain in the cartoon. So Wave 1 from Neca, they revealed this collection at Toy Fair back in February of 2020. And that was before COVID had hit. The Toy Fair takes place in New York every year around February. And so there was live, reporting coming out of Toy Fair. And this was one of the things I was most excited about that I saw at Toy Fair, because, they hadn't revealed the G.I. Joe classified figures yet, so we didn't know those were coming. I don't think we knew about Masters of the Universe Origins yet. So other than, I knew there'd be more Marvel Legends that I was already collecting. But there was the Spawn Kickstarter figure, so that was kind of exciting. And then there was these Defenders of the Earth figures from Neca, which I was kind of excited about. Mostly because I'm a huge Phantom fan. I don't care so much about... Flash Gordon is cool, but I don't know much about him. He's the one I know the least about. And, that's not even true, because I know more about him than I know about Mandrake the Magician. I know even less about him. And so for the first wave of figures, they've given us the Phantom, Flash Gordon, and then the villain, Ming the Merciless. So I assume in wave 2, it'll probably be Luthor, Mandrake the Magician, and possibly one of the kids, or maybe another villain. But I don't think I'll get any of them. The only one I really intended to buy was the Phantom and possibly Flash Gordon. But after months and months of waiting, after these figures finally went up for sale at Big Bad Toy Store, they did have them for sale individually, but the Phantom sold out really quick. Like, I check Big Bad Toy Store every day for new stuff, and so it was one of those frustrating things where I kind of refreshed the website and I thought, oh, cool, they've got the Defenders of the Earth figures. I looked for the Phantom, sold out. So that was a bummer, but they did have the full wave available for sale. So even though I ended up spending 3 times more than I intended, because I really only wanted one figure, I didn't really mind getting Flash Gordon or Ming. Like, they're both really nice looking figures. They're just not characters I have a super strong attachment to. But in the end, yeah, I don't mind getting them, and they're pretty cool, as you'll see shortly. So, yeah, that's your intro to the Defenders of the Earth. So, yeah, we're just going to take a look at those 3 figures. And so that's why I think this will probably be a pretty quick episode. So, yeah, without any further ado, let's take a look. So let's start with taking a look at my favorite figure from the line. So this is the Phantom. So as I mentioned before, he's kind of a pulp, like, comic strip character. He was first created in 1936. And the Phantom is this kind of like legacy character where this one guy, Christopher Walker, becomes the Phantom, and then he passes the mantle down through generations, and his sons, and sometimes even their daughters, become the Phantom. So the main Phantom, the one that was kind of introduced to everybody and the one that they made movies of and everything, is Kit Walker. So that's the guy that was part of the Defenders of the Earth. So we've got the Kit Walker Phantom here. And yeah, so the Phantom, he doesn't have any superpowers. At least he doesn't traditionally. I think in the Defenders of the Earth cartoon, maybe to make him a little more interesting to kids, I believe they gave his rings some some magic abilities or something, which you'll see here in a second when I show you the accessories that this guy came with. But typically he's kind of an odd superhero, because he wears the tights and the mask, and he looks like he could be fighting alongside Spider-Man or Batman or anybody in the Marvel or DC universe. But even though he's wearing these bright purple tights, he actually fights in the jungles of Africa. So, he's not, running around, from rooftop to rooftop. He's this weird jungle hero, kind of like Tarzan. So that's one of the things that I find most interesting about him. Another kind of cool little tidbit of information is the fact that he is wearing tights. He is credited with being the first superhero to do so, even before Superman. And with his mask, you'll notice he has a little black domino mask, and his eyes are fully whited out. Now, that's a pretty common thing you see in superhero comic books, but apparently the Phantom is the first guy to have the whited out eyes. And, it's more of an artistic choice. I don't know if it really makes sense. Like, how do him and Spider-Man and Batman see through those white eyes? Is it material? Is it lenses? I don't know. But he was the first guy to do that. So some of the other common stuff to know about the Phantom is, he lives in a skull cave, sort of like his own little Castle Grayskull. He has a horse and a wolf for sidekicks. And he has these 2 rings that he wears. So let's bring him up close here for a sec. So you can see the sculpting on this guy. It's really nice. Like, really ripped musculature. There's no real wrinkles or anything in the costume. This costume is very tight. You can see, all of the defined muscle detail on him. Anyway, his belt buckle there, you see his skull logo on the belt buckle. And you see the stripes on the belt buckle. He sometimes wears little, shorts outside of his pants the way Superman does, and they had these diagonal stripes on there. But, yeah, they left that off of this figure, and I understand why. I think the underwear outside of the pants is kind of an old school thing, and it does look a little goofy. But anyway, so for the rings, so I don't know if you can see the detail there, but that's supposed to be a little skull ring on this hand. And this hand, it's kind of like 2 swords or 2 sabers kind of crossing one another. And the idea of the rings is that when he punches a bad guy with his skull ring, he leaves the imprint of the skull permanently tattooed on his villain, which seems like a pretty mean thing to do. But even odder is this here is his good guy ring. And when this here kind of does the same thing. He doesn't punch it onto you, but what he does with his so-called good mark ring is when he comes across like somebody, an ally, he kind of marks them with this crest as well on the good mark. So he kind of brands you one way or the other, whether you're a friend or a foe. So kind of interesting. Now, my introduction to the Phantom, besides the Defenders of the Earth, which, like I said, didn't make a huge impression on me. I remember it a little bit. But for me, it was mostly the 1996 movie. That came out the year that I was graduating high school. And it starred Billy Zane as the Phantom. And it didn't do very well at the box office. But I thought that movie was pretty cool. I liked it right away. And it was kind of my introduction to like pulpy heroes. Like I grew up knowing Spider-Man and Batman and stuff like that, but it was kind of this trend around the time. They took these old comic book characters that predated me and that weren't really, currently in comic books or anything. So there was the Phantom and there was the Shadow and the Rocketeer kind of fell into that category, and even Dick Tracy. So yeah, they were taking all these old characters and I was like, who are these guys? I'm not familiar with them. And it kind of got me interested in kind of digging into the history of comic books a little bit. And I really took a liking to some of these characters, and the Phantom was my favorite. So he's been around since the 30s. He's mostly been in comic books, but there have been some movies. So other than the 1996 like live action movie, there was also an animated movie or series back in 1994 called Phantom 2040, which was set in the future. And then I have this kind of interesting movie that came out a while ago called The Phantom, and you see he's got a different look here, but that's because this kind of leans into the like legacy of the Phantom, because this is not Kit Walker. This is like one of his it's either one of his offspring or one of his descendants anyway that takes on the mantle of the Phantom. So this was definitely not as good as the Billy Zane movie, but I still had fun when I watched it. Now, as for the comics, you can find reprints of the old like newsprint comic books and stuff, but he hasn't had an ongoing series. So even back when he had the live action movie and you think maybe they could have capitalized on his popularity, they didn't really seem to. But I buy Phantom books when I have the opportunity, but they seem to come from a bunch of different publishers. Like here's one I have. This is from Hermes Press. So that's like one publisher. A while back, the Dynamite published this series called The Last Phantom. And you can see there on the cover, it leans into the legacy a little bit too. You see all the different Phantoms and the slight variances in their costume. So this is another volume of The Last Phantom. And this kind of gives some interesting origin stories. You see here, he kind of looks like he's wearing his Phantom costume, but really he's just like a naked guy covered in juice. And this kind of tells the story of how he got his idea for his costume, is that when he was first set loose in the jungles and these like berries dripped all over him and kind of gave him this haunting image of the Phantom, and then he adopted it into a costume. And it also explained how the imprint of the rings permanently tattoo on people, because it doesn't really make sense that if you punch somebody, sure, you might see the skull indented on somebody's forehead for a week or two, but it would go away. But this story explained that he douses his ring in this juice, and the juice goes into your skin and basically gives you a permanent tattoo. And then here's another Phantom book, again by a different publisher. This was by Moonstone. So different publishers all the time, and not very consistent. So it's always great when I can get a new Phantom book, but it doesn't happen nearly often enough. Now also, as far as Phantom figures go, there haven't been a ton. I've got a pretty good one, actually, that came from the 80s. When the Defenders of the Earth series was on back in 86, they actually did have a line of toys. Now, at the time, I didn't care enough to get any of them, but I was able to go back a couple years later and pick up this Phantom from the Defenders of the Earth. So you can see here, he's about a 4.5 inch figure. He's got kind of standard articulation here. Knees, elbows, head turns. Like, it's a pretty cool figure, pretty basic looking. But he also has this kind of feature here where you spin this thing on his back and his arms punch. So that's kind of cool. So this was kind of the best Phantom figure I've had in my collection up until now. The one other Phantom figure I have is the Funko Pop. So he's kind of cool. But oddly enough, at the same toy fair back in 2020 where Neca revealed their Phantom, Boss Fight Studio also revealed a line of figures they're doing. They have a toy line called the Vitruvian Hacks, and they're doing a spin-off called Hero Hacks. And they're taking old pulp heroes and using their Vitruvian Hacks, like kind of body construction on those 3 3/4 inch or about 4 inch action figures. And they're making Phantom figures as well. Now, they're not making Defenders of the Earth, so they're not making all the same characters. There's no Mandrake and stuff, at least not yet. But they are making their own versions of Flash Gordon and everything, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But for the Phantom, they've actually got quite a few figures. They haven't delivered on any of them yet, but they're all up for pre-order. You can order them from Big Bad Toy Store. But I have them all pre-ordered right now. So there is kind of a standard Phantom in his purple outfit. Then there is kind of a slight color variation. And then there is also a gray Phantom who comes with his horse. So these are all pretty cool. I'm looking forward to these. Earlier this year, or I guess maybe late 2020, I got Boss Fight Studios' Zorro figure. That's going to come on the same body type and everything, and I was really pleased with the Zorro. So I'm looking forward to adding those Phantoms to my collection. However, as cool as those guys are, I think this one will probably win out as my best Phantom, just because he's 6 inches, so he's bigger, and just the detail in this guy is really nice. So I will tell you that I was already a little worried, or at least I was informed when these figures came, because I'd read online that they were very stiff, and if you tried to move them outside of the packaging, they would very likely break. So I was warned to make sure to take a hairdryer and loosen the joints, or to put them in warm water. I prefer the hairdryer method, and that's what I did. Now, I didn't find it too bad, but they were pretty stiff, so I was pretty cautious. And you'll see I still don't have all of his joints loose. So his head turns. He's got good movement on the head there. You can look all over the place. This joint on his chest was pretty loose, or pretty tight. But now he can. His ab crunch works. He can lean forward and backward. No problem here with his elbows. But his elbows are double jointed. So really it should bend there and there. But once I got one of the joints working, I didn't bother fighting with the other joint. As long as he can bend that much, that's all I care about. But you should be able to bend his arm so his fist kind of almost comes up and touches his shoulder. But I'm worried about, this is such a little piece of plastic that connects his upper and lower arm. I don't want to risk breaking it. So same thing there. I've got the same movement there, but I haven't been able to get that joint to move. Which is kind of a shame, because it almost kind of defeats the purpose of the double jointed elbow. For the legs, you can do the splits. One leg's a little stiff still. I might have to loosen that one up. But I had the same problem with his knees. So you can see this leg here, I can bend. Oops. I could bend. Maybe it's stiffened up on me again. But this one here, I was able to bend at the second half, but not the top joint. And I think this one here, I had the opposite. Yeah, so I could bend at the top joint, but not the bottom joint. Now I'm sure I could do it if I took the time to slowly work the joint under heat. I could probably loosen it up. But as long as I can get him to bend his knees that much, I'm okay with it. I don't really do anything with these toys other than take a few pictures for Instagram, and then I just put them on a shelf for display. So he also swivels at the boot, although that's pretty tight as well. And then he's got a good joint, rocker joints on the ankles and everything. So he's got a decent range of movement, but you gotta work for it. You gotta earn it. So there you go. Pretty cool. Now for his accessories. So all these figures came with the same pistol. So he's got this kind of metallic blue laser pistol. And it's got this translucent blast effect. So it's got a hole on the end. And you just plug the gun in like so. Oops. And there you see, so it looks like he's blasting. So that's pretty cool. It also came with a smaller blast effect. So you can just put it on like that if you just want a little blast. And it came with some alternate hands. So you see I've got them both with the fists. But he's got a optional hand here, which would hold the laser gun. And he also has an alternate fist, but where the ring is, there's a hole, and you can plug this laser beam into the ring, so it looks like he's blasting you from the ring. So that's why I said I believe in the cartoon they added some sort of superpower to him. He has the ability to blast from his ring, which he could not do in the comic books or in the movie. But yeah, you see if I take that out, there's just a little plug, and there's a hole where the ring should be. So that's pretty cool. Lots of nice display options. And the last accessory he has is pretty weird. This is Zuffy, apparently. So this is kind of the equivalent of, like, I guess you'd say, like Orko in the He-Man cartoons. You know, when they try and stick something cute and furry in there, maybe like an Ewok in Star Wars. I don't really remember Zuffy. I don't remember the show well enough to remember him, but apparently he was like a little cutesy sidekick that didn't really hang out with the Phantom so much, but he hung out with one of the kids in the group. So the fact that they packaged him with the Phantom leads me to believe they might not be planning on making all the kids. But anyway, I guess it's kind of cool that they packed him in here. He is articulated. His arms move, his legs move, and his tail moves. And his head, I think. Yeah, his head turns a little bit. And he's holding this crystal. I'm not sure the significance of it, but I'm sure it means something. Anyway, so there you go. So that's the Phantom and Zuffy. So next up, let's talk about Flash Gordon. So Flash is kind of this, like, spaceman type character. He was created, again, like Phantom, in the 1930s. And he was created to kind of compete with another popular kind of pulp superhero spaceman, Buck Rogers, who's another character I have kind of like hazy memories of Buck Rogers from when I was a kid. Like, obviously he predates me, but there was like a movie or a TV show or cartoon, something like that when I was a kid. Me and my brother actually have Buck Rogers action figures back from the late 70s or early 80s, but I really couldn't tell you much as in the way of details of Buck Rogers, but I am familiar with him. Anyway, so Flash Gordon is kind of a Buck Rogers type character. So he's an Earthman, and he goes into outer space. Specifically, he goes to the planet Mongo, which is ruled by his archenemy, Ming the Merciless. So, like Phantom, he mostly exists in like comic strips. There have been some comic series over the years. I think most recently Dynamite did a comic of him in like 2011. There have been some TV shows, but probably most famous is the 1980 film, which, again, I saw it as a kid, but I don't really remember it. It's kind of got this cult following. I've been tempted to pick it up on DVD in the past, so I can maybe give it another watch. But if you've ever seen the movie Ted with Mark Wahlberg, they're like obsessed with the Flash movie in there, and the actor that played Flash in the 1980 movie actually appears in the movie Ted and everything, so you might be familiar with him just through that. But anyway, so here's Flash Gordon. Now, he doesn't really have an iconic look in the same way that the Phantom does. Like Phantom, you think guy in a purple suit and a mask. Sure, you can change it up and maybe give him underwear outside of his pants or not. As you've seen from those figures, sometimes he wears a gray outfit. But, you know, he always looks like the Phantom. Whereas, when it comes to Flash Gordon, there have been all kinds of different interpretations of him. So, like this here, the red with the kind of yellow around his neck and shoulders, that's pretty close to what I picture in my mind when I think of Flash Gordon. And I think my vision of Flash comes less from the live-action movie and more so from the Flash cartoon that existed before the Defenders of the Earth cartoon. There was like a Flash cartoon that ran from 1979 to 1982. So again, I would have been like really little, but maybe I saw that on repeats and stuff. And in that show, he had like a red shirt with some yellow circles around the top. And so that's the kind of the classic Flash Gordon costume I think of. But, I don't know if he really has a definitive costume. But I'm pretty happy with this one. I see this figure and I think, sure, Flash Gordon. And he's got the same articulation as the Phantom. He was also kind of stiff. And I don't know if I've got better movement on him than I do Phantom. No, I'm still in a little trouble. So I can move one of the joints on his elbow with his knees. Okay, so I think... Yeah, so I've got both of his knee joints, so you can see how it's supposed to work when you have a double-jointed knee. He can get his leg all the way back there. Also, his boot swivel is a lot looser. So yeah, they're supposed to have the same articulation, but I think I had more luck moving Flash around than I did the Phantom. He's got his lightning bolt logo on his belt buckle there. Now, speaking of articulation, there is one thing I want to mention with him. This was, I think, the first figure I opened out of the three of them, and I was expecting them to be really stiff, and I was shocked at how wobbly this guy's head is. Like, he's like a little bobblehead here. This thing is just flims around all over the place. In the packaging, he was kind of staring down like this, and I realized it's because his head just like, you can see it just, it's very wonky. I don't know if that's coming across, but it just, yeah, it takes no effort to move his head around. And it almost seems like it's sitting too high on the joint because you get these kind of gaps in his neck sometimes, depending on how you set his head, and it just doesn't look very good. And yeah, you can't push it down any further. I tried. I didn't try super hard because I didn't want to break him. But like for posing him on my shelf, I can find a pose and it will stay in place pretty good. So I'm not too worried about it, but it is kind of odd that these figures that have a reputation for being very stiff, and this guy would have such a wobbly head. But anyway, so there's not much to see on his costume. Red tights. The only real details are the shoulders, the shoulder armor, and the collar. As for the head sculpt, it's a pretty nice head sculpt. His nostrils are maybe a little flared. He looks maybe a little angry. But otherwise, like I would say, he's a handsome fella. I like his kind of wavy blonde hair. He looks appropriate for kind of a generic Flash Gordon, not really based on any particular thing. Like, he doesn't look like the Flash Gordon from the cartoon. He doesn't look like the Flash Gordon from the live-action movie. And yet, he looks like Flash Gordon. Now, for accessories, you see I've got him holding a couple. Now, in the package, he actually had two fists, just like the Phantom did. And I was a little nervous about taking his hands out, but I used the hair dryer and warmed up his wrists and was able to pop both of his fists out of there pretty easily. Although you do see some paint scraping. Like, that was all flesh colored, and by me taking it out, even now it's still flaking. You can see that there. So it's a little worrisome, because I wouldn't want his hands to flake red. You'd have this red portion here, so be mindful of that, I suppose. But with the Phantom, I like his fists. But with Flash, I feel I had to change his hands because, you want him to be able to hold his laser gun. With the Phantom, you don't really, it's cool that they gave him a gun, I guess, but he doesn't really need it. And then also, he's got this really cool kind of translucent sword. So I wanted to make sure he could hold those accessories. So otherwise, he also had another open hand. So this is so he can hold his sword in either hand, I suppose. And then he also came with two of the same blast effects as the Phantom. So he's got this long one that can just plug onto the end of his gun for the long blast effect. And then he also has the little short blast effect as well. So there you go. I don't think I have anything more to say about Flash Gordon. So lastly, we have Ming the Merciless. So as I mentioned, this is kind of Flash Gordon's main villain. And he became the main villain of the Defenders of the Earth. So before I get into talking about him, I realized that I forgot to talk about some of the other Flash Gordon toys I wanted to mention. Now, even though I'm a Phantom fan, so I have some Phantom figures. I have the Defenders of the Earth one from the 80s, and I had the Funko Pop. There's other Phantom figures I've wanted to get. Like, for example, there's this like 8-inch Mego doll of the Phantom, which I've been debating on buying for years, but it's kind of expensive. I finally think I don't have to buy that anymore because now I've got this nice 6-inch figure from Neca. But when it comes to Flash and Ming, I was not a big Flash Gordon fan, so I don't have any toys of these guys. These are my first and only figures of Flash and Ming. But Flash did have a bunch of figures in the past, of various styles, whether it was his figure from the Defenders of the Earth cartoon. He also had kind of the Mego doll style. And Boss Fight, as I mentioned, they're doing a bunch of Phantom figures coming out soon. They're also doing Flash Gordon figures. Now they're doing Flash Gordon based on the live action movie, but they're also doing Flash and Ming based on like kind of the classic comic book looks. So like you'll see with this Boss Fight Flash, it's a totally different look than the NECA figure and different from the live action and everything else. This is kind of another unique look, and this just, again, backs up the fact that Flash does not really have an iconic outfit. The Ming figure is pretty cool, but you can see his skin tone is different on this Ming, because Ming has not traditionally been green. He was changed to green for the Defenders of the Earth cartoon. Like if you see the Flash live action movie, he was Caucasian or Asian perhaps, and I think that's why they changed him to green, is because Ming is kind of like a lot of villains back in the day, like Mandarin back in the day, or characters with names like Yellow Claw and stuff. There was a lot of Asian characters which were pretty bad, like stereotypes, and Ming kind of falls into this category. So I think by changing him green to the cartoon and making him an alien, hopefully it kind of hides the fact that he's a bad Asian stereotype. Anyway, so let's take a look at this Ming figure. This guy is pretty cool. So even though I don't have any real personal attachment to the character, there's no denying that this is a really nice figure. Like really cool paint details on the face. Those eyes look very menacing. They look like he's up to something. Then you see this kind of cowl around him here. There's all kinds of different colors. You get the red and the purple with the gold trim. All looks very nice, very detailed on all this. The belt. He's got this dragon logo here. Really cool. Underneath. Okay, and he's got some sculpted detail back here. Again, paint apps. Even the ones that are kind of hidden underneath his cape. You can see all those. Detailed on the cuffs here. Even the skin tone, you can see they've got, kind of a black wash to bring out some of those like sculpted veiny details. He's got his black nails. Really cool. Like the most impressive figure of the line, easily. But he's probably still the one that will sell the least, just because everybody loves the heroes. Now I will mention his cape. So you see he's got a soft goods cape. Nice shiny purple on the back. Nice shimmery red on the inside. And it does have a wire at the bottom here. So you can kind of pose that if you want to into the little shapes. So if you've got this guy displayed on your shelf, you could probably make it look like it's wind blown or something like that. Maybe get some really cool poses out of it. But anyway, it's a nice cape. And just as a little sidebar here, my wife, Vanessa, doesn't care about these toys very much. She supports my hobby, but she doesn't know. She has no idea who Flash and Ming and the Phantom and all that stuff are. But when this box arrived yesterday, I showed her Ming just because she loves fashion and all that sort of stuff. And I thought she would appreciate Ming because purple is her favorite color. And so, yeah, she really did like Ming's cape. And I was kind of surprised. I didn't expect another figure in the box that I got yesterday to kind of steal the show from Ming. But one of the other guys I got in the box yesterday was a Star Wars Black Series figure. And so I'd seen this guy, and I kind of thought I knew what I was getting. But here you see, so this Star Wars dude here, he's got a soft goods red cape as well. He's definitely not as flashy as Ming. But I was surprised that when I opened him out of the packaging, he's got this really spectacular purple cape underneath there. And so, yeah, I think Vanessa liked this one even better. So, yeah, suck it, Ming. Anyway, so his accessories, what does he got? He's got the same stuff as the other two guys. And then he has the same pistol in that metallic blue. He's got the large blast effect as well as the little blast effect. Now for unique accessories, you see he's got one hand that's kind of closed, but this hand is just open. I don't know if that can really hold anything. It looks like it could maybe hold the gun. But the only additional hand he came with is this one here. And this looks like it was intended to hold the gun. So I'm guessing that that hand is kind of sculpted to hold onto his sword here. So that's a really nice sword. It's got a nice sculpted detail there on the hilt, the handle. And even a little diamond sculpted and painted at the end of the blade there. So that's really cool. So I think that's meant to go in that hand. And then for that almost closed hand, he's got this staff. Oops. But yeah, this is really cool too. You can see this kind of really detailed dragon head there with the tongue coming out. Lots of different colors involved with the gold, the silver, the red, the purple, the black. So yeah, very nice. So yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about Ming. But overall, I would really recommend these figures. I think they have been getting a little bit of a bad rap because of the stiff joints. But as long as you know that going in, like once I used a little heat on them, like he moves fine. So, you know, I got all the standard articulation there. And yeah, they look fantastic. So yeah, if you're just like me and you're just going to put these guys on a shelf for display, then, you know, you won't have to worry about the problems about the articulation and, you know, the paint flaking. Like if you're somebody that's going to take these guys out in the backyard and play with them, then yeah, you might have some issues with quality control if the paint starts flaking or the joints are too stiff. But for a collector like me, I think these guys are actually super awesome. And the Phantom is definitely a contender for me for my best of the year list. And I actually forgot to mention just before I go, I just want to talk about the Phantom stubble again. I love the facial paint on this guy. Like it's subtle, but you can see he's got this like 5 o'clock shadow painted on his face. Really cool. And that is the feature I think that really puts him high up on my list for me. So yeah, really great looking Phantom figure. And heck, maybe I'll bring them all out here again before I sign off. If I can get him to stand up. And I can't. Alright, there we go. So there we go. That is the Defenders of the Earth, Wave 1 from Neca. I recommend them. They're cool. Okay, so that was Wave 1 of Neca's Defenders of the Earth series. So I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, please hit the like button, leave me comments below. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I appreciate if you do that as well. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, I have a bunch of new toys in. I'm way behind on my videos. I'm still trying to put one out every week, but sometimes that's just not enough to keep up with the toys coming in. So yeah, I'll be back soon with another one. So I hope you come back for that as well. And yeah, so I will see you then. Thank you for watching.